Hey, what is going on, everybody? We're going to try this solo this time. Oh, boy. All right. So, we had some really interesting fights over the weekend, not the least of which was Tyson Fury defeating Deontay Wilder in the seventh round. Now, I did call for a sixth round knockout by Tyson Fury. And, I mean, I understand the skepticism over his camp change 2 months before the fight. I get that. And I also understand the skepticism of him coming in heavier. I heard a lot of talk about uh, him being out of shape again, um, and maybe even an ankle injury. Uh, but, all of that is moot. Um, the facts are he came in at his third heaviest weight, and Deontay Wilder came in as heavy as we've ever seen him. Um, I am not a boxing analyst, nor do I have enough experience watching boxing to really break things down. But judging by the first performance and going into this fight, I just really thought that Fury was going to be able to put it together. And he said, I'm going to walk him down and I'm going to put him out in the second round. Now, I mean, a second round knockout would have been incredible. We'd get almost like a resurgence or a second coming of the Mystic Mac era. But with Tyson Fury this time, that didn't happen. But what he did do was put on a masterful boxing performance against one of, if not the hardest hitters of all time. He neutralized all offense. I think in the first three rounds, Deontay Wilder only landed nine punches. That's incredible. And I know that's kind of Deontay Wilder's game, is to sit back and wait. But he tends to be kind of the aggressor, and he walks down his opponent. And this time, Tyson just did not let him breathe at all, man. I mean, every single round was just him pressing forward. He ended up getting the knockdown, and honestly, when he knocked him down, I pretty much I wasn't rooting for Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder. I just wanted to see a really interesting fight. And to be honest with you, I don't think it was a great back and forth battle that I'm usually looking forward to when I go to watch these fights. But I don't know, watching someone who's mastered the art of boxing at 6'9" and 200 and what was he? I think it was 260 plus pounds. Yeah, it's just incredible. His footwork is amazing. He's so fleet of foot, and he's just so light. He's just the way he bounces around in that ring. You would not expect that, or you wouldn't believe that he is as big as he is. The big story, obviously, is he finally gets a belt back. Not the belt that he once held, but a belt. And we might get to see him against Anthony Joshua if all the powers that be get their shit together and can put the boxing fight on that everybody wants to watch. That is if Wilder doesn't initiate his rematch clause, which he has 30 days to do. So there was also a lot of talk after the fight of Wilder having an inner ear injury, maybe even a burst eardrum, and that was causing the problem with his equilibrium. But his camp has said that it wasn't that. It was just a cut on his inner ear that was bleeding. So he should be good to go with obviously another training camp and a later date set. So we'll see what happens there. Regardless of what happens, I'm just super excited for the heavyweight division now. We have a lot of interesting matchups. I wouldn't mind seeing Wilder fight any of the. I'd still like to see Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder. That fight would be amazing. Of course, Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury would be fantastic. And you still got Ruiz in there if he. I don't want to say takes it seriously, but in that second Joshua fight, he just. I don't know what the game plan was, or if I couldn't even wager to guess on that one. That was just a really awkward performance by him, but he's still out there floating in the ether. We've got Ortiz, of course, who's always a tough challenge for anybody. So we really have 5 heavyweight boxers who, on any given night, putting everything together, could take the title from anyone. So that's super exciting, and I can't wait to see what happens there. And one of the, like, it was a little emotional, like, seeing Tyson Fury finally get the belt, or get a belt again in the ring afterwards, and singing American Pie with everybody. It was just beautiful. And if you know anything about his story, where he was, not like 4 years ago now, I don't even know if it was that long. He was 375 pounds. He was, you can always put down these athletes and say, like, oh man, if I was in his shoes, and I had all that money, I wouldn't be doing all the stupid things he's doing, or I wouldn't have the problems that he has, because I would just fix all my problems, or I would get my shit together. And in some cases, that might be your initial thought, and it might be mine. I'm not innocent of that either. But if his story and how he was going through like mental health issues, and he was contemplating suicide, and he was just being out of shape was, a symptom of a bigger problem, and he just had a lot of things going on. I saw this video floating around of him, that first one that he recorded when he started running, and he's got that big pudgy face because he's well over 300 pounds, and he's out there running, and he's like thanking Deontay Wilder for challenging him and saying he can't do it, and he's out there running and getting back on the right track. And when you think about all the stuff that he had to go through internally and externally, obviously his body, it's incredible, man. It's like seeing him come back from that, finally being able to recapture the title. It's such an inspirational dude. And, your mileage may vary. You can take from it what you want. Maybe you have nothing. Maybe this doesn't connect on any level for you, but for me it does. There's a lot about his story that connects with me. We all love a good underdog story. We also love a good comeback. And, that first fight, that's what he was. He was the underdog. He was coming back. He fought nobody for years. Comes back and fights an well undersized heavyweight. And that I remember that fight was such a shit show. There was the talk coming out of the fight was there was actually a fight in the crowd that the boxers stopped to watch because it was more interesting than their own. And then right after that, he fights Deontay Wilder, takes him all 12 rounds, does the Undertaker get up. He got knocked down in like the 8th round or something like that too. And I remember him, I had him winning that fight, but I wasn't upset that there was a draw. There was because we got to have this. And, we get to see a more polished Tyson Fury, a new Tyson Fury, someone with more aggression, sitting down on his punches a little bit more, and still having just incredible hand speed. He just put it all together, and we just got to see an amazing performance that caps off an amazing story from an amazing guy. It was so good. So freaking good. We also had UFC Auckland over the weekend, and the big story coming out of there was Dan Hooker versus Paul Felder. And I said it before the fight. I thought that Paul Felder was going to... sorry, my nose is running really bad. I thought that Paul Felder was going to be able to do it. It was a 50-50 pick for me. I saw a way that both of them could end up winning. And in my head, I kind of expected it to go the distance, even though neither one of them had ever been a full 25 minutes. Just they're both so tough. Both tough as nails, man. As tough as it gets. Excellent strikers. Just they're both, they've been, there's this thing going around, where they're not like Paul Felder's not an elite fighter. I don't think that's the case. I just think he's had some difficult stylistic matchups, and he's had a couple setbacks. Plus, he also, he's an analyst. He's working another job right now, and I don't think it's a case of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But he had a lot going on, and I think he is an elite fighter who could give anybody in the 155 division a real tough out. Like he's got it, man. He's just got something. And for me, the pick was a little bit emotional because he's up there in years. He finally got a string of wins together in the 155 division. Finally able, to just about to get over that hump, and then this one would have capped it, and then he's in title shot contention. We're talking McGregor's, Nurmagomedov's, Tony Ferguson's, and it's not just a payday, but for him, like the challenge of, or the ability to actually challenge for that title, I thought that was gonna be the difference maker. Oh, sorry, my nose is running so bad. And he didn't do exactly what I thought he would do, in that he didn't win. I don't think he won the first 2 rounds. He was getting kind of picked apart in the first round. His front leg, his lead leg, was getting beat up real bad. Hooker was real good with those leg kicks. And then in the 3rd round, he really started to pick it up. And then he poured it on Hooker in the 4th. The 5th was a little bit back and forth. And, in the 5th round, so Hooker attempted takedowns in the 4th, but they were kind of not quite panic. He wasn't rocked and then just dove at the legs. But you can see it on his face that Felder hurt him bad. And he had a good poker face about it. And, the analysts were saying like, oh, Hooker was talking about how he's well-versed and he's more well-rounded and he can do whatever he wants to Felder. No, that's not what it was, man. In the first 2 rounds when he was the hammer, he didn't go for takedowns. He thought he was just going to be able to outpoint him on the feet, maybe even get a knockout with a big shot. And that didn't happen. We saw it in the 3rd round when Felder was finally starting to put it on him. Cracked him pretty damn good. He was getting him with that left hook. As Hooker was leaving that right hand down. He was open for that left hook, and he was getting nailed with it. I don't know if he had a broken jaw. I didn't see the medical report. But you could see on his face, like he had a big, like a welt on his jaw, like tons of swelling on his jaw. Oh, man. Disgusting. And, yeah, it's not okay to say he was robbed, because that word gets thrown around way too much. And if you're emotionally attached to a fight, or you see something that you don't agree with, your immediate reaction might be, oh, that's a robbery, that's bullshit. That's not the case. The fight was very close. And to say that, Hooker definitely didn't win, well, that's kind of bogus. I mean, he won rounds 1 and 2. 3 was actually pretty close. It was back and forth. I just felt like Felder did more damage. And then the 4th round was clearly Felder's. We got to the 5th round. Felder was still pouring it on him. Felder was doing it, man. And the way I saw it, I was like, this is it. He's putting it on him in the final round. And then Hooker finally got the takedown. He controlled him for a good period of time, I think over a minute. But he didn't really do anything with it. Didn't really put any damage on him. But he was able to impose his will onto Felder, which does count for something. But I think you have to take into account both fighters, like fighting style, and what their game plan is, and whether or not they're able to implement their game plan successfully throughout the entire fight. Because if you look at it through that lens, you can see that Felder was able to do what he wanted to do in those last 3 rounds. Even in the 5th round, he was still putting it on Hooker. And it was close. I mean, if you look at the striking numbers, there was only, like a 3-strike difference. And Hooker did get the takedown. So if you want to go purely based off of numbers, okay, fine. You can give him the 5th round. But if you look at this, insignificant strikes are not all created equal. When Felder was hitting Hooker in that 5th round, it was hurting him. And you could tell, like, there was a gut check moment. I don't know if it was in the third or fourth round. And Duke Rufus is an amazing coach and a great cornerman. And he's very technical. And in the third, it doesn't matter. One of the rounds, he tells Felder, do this for your family. Do this for your daughter. And, like, you could see, like, when you hear that from other coaches who maybe you're not as familiar with, you think, oh, come on, give him technical advice. Well, he'd been given technical advice, and he has a great track record of doing that. This is something that he wanted to stir up in Felder. And he chose this moment, and it worked. Obviously, it lit a fire, and he was able to dig deep. I mean, Felder's right eye was shut by the end of the third round. The swelling on it just kept getting worse and worse. At the end of the fight, he couldn't even see out of his right eye. His leg was beat up. There's no way he was walking, like, it felt normal to walk on it. It didn't matter. He kept pushing forward. I thought that would get him the win, and it didn't. And then at the end of the fight, oh, man. It made me tear up quite a bit because he was talking about his daughter. Anytime anybody talks about their daughters, it always gets me teared up because, I have some. So, yeah, this is one of the reasons I was really rooting for Felder, because if it was going to be his time, or if there was a time for it to be his time, it's now. It's not a year from now. It's not 2 years from now. He doesn't have that. And Hooker's young. They put on a great performance. It wasn't gonna tank Hooker's stock because he took a loss to Felder in a 5-round war like that. That wouldn't have been that bad. And he says, like, he's got a 4-year-old that misses him every time he leaves, and he's already got another, like, a really good job. He's a fantastic analyst with a little bit of color. Like, he is very good. And everybody always says, like, these fighters need to leave before the damage really starts to add up later in their career and they can't take a punch anymore. And so if he does choose to leave and this was his last fight, what a great swan song that was. Duke Rufus came out and said he spoke a little too soon. He was emotional after the fight and he'll likely be back, but I don't know if he's ever going to get a shot this big again and work his way back up to the top. Future for Hooker. Holy crap, dude. That kid is so good. So good. And that camp, I think they had 3 fighters on that card. Obviously, it's in New Zealand, and that's where he's from. That's where City Kickboxing is located. So it makes sense that they have some fighters on the card. But damn, were they good. All of them. And you can tell that, obviously, it's a kickboxing gym. So they're going to have an emphasis on striking. But even early on, who was it? Oh, Brad Riddell. He got taken down quite a bit in that first, or was it the second round? I'm forgetting, but I remember him getting taken down, but no damage was being done, and he just stayed calm, got back up, and did work on the feet. Landed big shots. I mean, in that first round, he landed a huge shot. Riddell did great. Oh, man. Like, that camp, they're putting out some killers, and I'm excited to see what else comes out of there in the future of anybody else who wants to go to City Kickboxing and, modify their game a little bit. That might be a destination. We've had people going to Thailand to learn traditional Muay Thai. Maybe they go a little bit south, go to New Zealand and head to City Kickboxing, do a camp there. I'd be excited to see a more established fighter with a different set of skills, a specific set of skills, a different set of skills, go down there and see what he can come out with. Whew. That's a great, that was a great fight, though. Great fight. Can't take anything away from either fighter. Fantastic. I wish Felder would have got the nod. He didn't. Sky's the limit for Hooker. Yeah, that's a great fight. Oh, the light heavyweight division, the co-main event. Jimmy Crute ends up taking down, I'm going to call him Michael because that last name is a nightmare. Jimmy Crute just takes him down, didn't let him breathe, and puts him in a Kimura. The light heavyweight division needs some fresh blood. They do. I know there's this surge, but I mean, outside of like the top two, there really isn't anybody to challenge John Jones anymore. And they need some new blood. And I don't know if Jimmy Crute's that guy, but it's always interesting to see a light heavyweight put it together and, get a really dominant win. Karolina Kowalkiewicz, she got her right eye hurt against Jan. I think she hurt her right eye in the first round, and it just got worse and worse. I think the corner should have thrown in the towel on that one. I really do. I don't see a reason. And that brings me back to the boxing match. So Wilder's corner, they threw in the towel, and his head cornerman or his head coach said, I wouldn't have thrown in the towel. I would have let him go out on his shield. And even one of my buddies was telling me, like, he should have let him go out. He should have let him go out. Like, I want to see a knockout. And, like, I paused for a second because, I enjoy a knockout as much as the next guy. But there's something about when a fighter is clearly outmatched, whether it be, specific circumstances from within the fight earlier in the fight, or maybe that's, there's a giant skill gap. Maybe it's the matchup. Honestly, it could be literally anything. Maybe it's just not his night, Maybe he ate some bad food the day before. It doesn't matter, right? But when a guy is clearly outmatched and you can see he's just taking damage over and over again and he's not putting anything back, like, how long are you going to sit there and watch this guy get brain damage, which could be permanent, The next punch could be the last. That could be the last punch he's ever able to take in his entire life. I know that's, extremist and a little bit alarmist. That's not what I'm going for. What I'm saying is, like, if that's the absolute worst case scenario, and the best case scenario is you're waiting for a Hail Mary shot, like, obviously there's leeway in between. But if your fighter isn't putting anything back, man, you gotta, like, I agree with the towel throw. And that's what I told my buddy. I'm like, man, if it's a flash knockout or they're going back and forth and one guy just cracks the other dude, I love that. That's great. That's, a back and forth battle, a chess match, and some guy just does a surprise move. He just puts it together in that moment. But when you just see a beatdown over multiple rounds where the fighter just has nothing to put back. So in this fight, Kowalkiewicz, tough as nails. She's so freaking tough. In that first round, she just could not get her offense going at all. Jan was just beating her. The second round was worse. She was covering up her right eye like this the whole time while she was fighting. Almost making like those, like childhood telescopes that we used to do. I don't know if she was adjusting her eyesight or maybe even covering it up because it was messing with her depth perception or just protecting it. I don't know what she was doing, but it wasn't fighting anymore. She was just in like survival mode. And when that's a momentary thing in a round where you get cracked and you're off balance or you're in a submission and you got to get out, being in survival mode isn't necessarily grounds for calling the fight. That's okay. That's how that works. Like, you survive that position, you get out of it, and then you make your way back and you start to put things together on your side. That's not what this was. She was in survival mode for pretty close to 15 minutes. I mean, you can be generous and say 10 minutes in just a second in the third round. And I was really hoping they wouldn't let her go back out. Someone should have stopped that one. Luckily, in the third round, she didn't take a ton of damage. Sorry, my nose is so bad. Luckily, in the third round, it was mostly on the ground, and she didn't take a ton of damage. So, that's good. Props to Jan for putting it together. Looking fantastic out there, and props to Kowalkiewicz for being probably too tough for her own damn good. Let's see. Ben Sassoli. Freaking the combat wombat. That dude, his mullet is fantastic. He drew on abs for the weigh-in. Hilarious. I'm always a sucker for a clown. I just am. Someone who clearly doesn't take themselves too seriously, especially in a profession like cage fighting, prize fighting. Anybody who can not take themselves seriously in that scenario, um, you know, while putting on a show for the fans, that's fantastic. I love it. And he just came out looking like Homer Simpson. He just didn't bob and weave. He just kept getting cracked in the face, and he was just, using his chin as his defense and trying to swing. Didn't work, man. He got caught behind the ear. Equilibrium went, ended up on his back, and the fight was called. I mean, Benzasoli is funny, dude. I mean, I'd like to see him back maybe for one more fight. Like, and just for nothing else other than to see what else he can do, because that drawing on abs thing was freaking hilarious. It looked like the movie 300 for a minute. We already covered Brad Riddell. It did great. Let's see, there was one other fight. Turkagov, that was a good fight. Julian Turner, yeah, that was fantastic. He just outclassed Kulabau. Oh, okay. Emil Mech. Dang it. Oh. I have 2 cats, and I'm pretty sure I'm allergic to cats. Been living with them for about 8 years now. Never thought to go to the doctor until recently. Probably not my best move. Okay, so Emil Mech, he was the one he's the Viking. I think he's from Norway. He was the one that Kamaru Usman took down and kept down on the ground for 3 straight rounds, and then did his infamous, I beat a so-called Viking sitting at about 30%, right? And then he got ridiculed for that because people misunderstood what he was saying, blah, 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 blah. So Emil Mech clearly has issues with takedown defense. That was 2 years ago. So what happened in this fight? The exact same thing. Jake Matthews took him down at will. And even on the feet, he landed a big shot on Mech and put him on his ass. Mech, he's imposing. He looks like a freaking Viking. He comes in, he's screaming, slapping his chest and stuff. And even after the fight, he's screaming and yelling. It's like, dude, he's an interesting guy, but I think he needs some more work. Maybe a step down in competition, possibly out of the UFC. But if he's going to stay in the UFC, they really need to match him up with another striker. Maybe test him, see how he is on his feet. But judging by that performance, I don't see how anybody who fights him does anything other than just drills takedowns for the entire camp. Because that's the easiest path to victory with him right now. And he might have worked on it. I probably couldn't take his ass down. But a professional fighter with a really good camp and an insane work ethic, someone who's also in the UFC, the hardest MMA organization in the world to be in, yeah, I think they could figure that out, and I think they could take you down, man. So, yeah, maybe a step down in competition, maybe out, like I said, out of the UFC. He doesn't have to go all the way back down to the regional circuit. He probably can still just smoke people. But the dude clearly needs work. Kai Kara France, that was a really weird fight. I think his nickname is Don't Blink, but the last 3 fights have all been decisions. I mean, it doesn't really mean anything, but when you're not putting people out, it kind of sours your nickname there. One of the bigger fights for me, Angela Hill taking on Luke Boonmay on 19 days notice, I think. Yeah. Incredible. She didn't start training a martial art or working out until the age of 24. Let that sink in. Compared to... So, I'm going to be honest, I don't think this... Unless you're some crazy genetic freak, I don't think this really cuts it in most of the men's division in the UFC. But because... And to her credit, she's kind of a genetic freak. She is built, man, insanely strong, and she's got a great work ethic. But this kind of like shows you where the like the women's divisions are when someone, well, that's not true. She was doing a Muay Thai. Like she started Muay Thai at 24, had like quite a few pro fights, then did the Ultimate Fighter with very little to no MMA experience. Like I think she only had 2, and then she's basically been learning on the job in the UFC. And like this is the 10-year mark. She's just turned 34, so she's only been doing fighting for 10 years, MMA for even less, and she's just putting it together. Now wrap that all up, and she just had her 6th fight in less than a year. She could potentially have, because it's been 11 months, she could potentially have 7 fights in a year, and she won 4 of them already. She's 4-2, and one of those losses was kind of iffy. I think both of them might be, honestly. Yeah, think about that. Like the amount she said it. She said that the fights are basically training camp for her now. And she was cut from the UFC. She went back to Invicta for a little bit and then came back. Yeah, incredible work ethic. Super exciting. I really hope she can put it together, maybe even challenge for a title. I don't think she's quite there yet, but she's clearly improving. She doesn't have any of that damage that a lot of these other girls have, or a lot of these other fighters have. People that have been wrestling or boxing since they were 5 years old, 10 years old. She didn't have any of that. She had no damage at 24. So she's coming into the sport fresh and hitting her like physical prime. Like she's at the tail end of her physical prime, but this is it. And she's pretty damn healthy. So I'm excited to see where that goes. It's pretty cool. All right. I think that's pretty much it. Those are all the fights from the weekend. All right. So for anybody who listens to this whole thing, you are awesome. Let me know what you think about the solo stream stuff. I got to get a better camera and a different setup, and I don't know, maybe change my scenery a little bit, put up like a tarp or something, like one of those green screens, because yellow is kind of, it hurts my eyes looking at it, so I don't know how you guys do it. All right. So if you're not already, subscribe to the podcast. It's on Podbean. We're on Spotify now. Super Lunch Bros. Surprise! We're on YouTube. Subscribe to YouTube. I really appreciate it. It helps a lot. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I am out.